So I'm going to start with priming my face, so I can get a bit oily around the chin and it can lead to product slipping off, so I need something to grip to it. And sort of around the T-zone sort of area, my pores are quite visible, so I need something to just smooth it out slightly. So I'm just going to start with applying that. Now I've got a creamy sort of crayon-y sort of wax-based colour corrector in a apricot, sort of dark orange sort of colour. And I've got a fluffy brush to sort of buff it out. What I'm going to do some colour correction around my mouth particularly, maybe a bit on the forehead, but most of the mouth and a little bit on the under eyes. There isn't really that much discoloration or any sort of eye bags, but a tiny bit. It's more so for me for the mouth area because I naturally have a sort of greyness to my skin which doesn't look strange. It's that sort of green you get when you have olive undertones, but sometimes when I put foundation on top of that it looks quite ashy and not good. So what you do is you get an orange to warm it up and you just change accordingly to your skin tone. So if you have really pale skin, you'll use more of a lighter peach, and if you have really dark skin, you'll use almost like a brick red sort of colour. So I like to just rub it on the back of my hand just to sort of warm the product up a bit. I think it also might be my sort of artistic side of just liking to mix things, sort of using my hand as a sort of mixing palette. I'm just going to sort of lightly sweep across the brush, and then I'm just going to start to sort of buff it into the skin. So it'll just look a bit like a bit of an orange beard sort of. Of course, this is when I don't have any glasses on, so the vision's a bit impaired right now, so this will be interesting. What I will do is I'll have a close-up look in a mirror just before I move on to the next step. And for the under eyes, I like to use a smaller brush, and I'm going to concentrate it where there's a little bit of discoloration. I want to keep this application quite light because I want to avoid creasing and that sort of a natural look. Now I'm going to apply a concealer under my eyes. So this particular concealer leans a bit orange for me considering my undertone, but considering orange is the colour we use for warming up and to sort of help conceal, it does benefit me in this case and won't really cause that much of a problem, especially when we sort of graduate it and blend it in with the more olive toned foundation. So again, I'm just going to place it on top of where the colour correction is, and I'm going to start off with a relatively light application because I can always build it up and I want to avoid that cakey look. I'm just going to tap, tap, just slowly blend it in. So it'll probably look quite orange because the concealer itself is quite orange and the colour corrector of course is orange. So it will still look a bit strange at the moment, but that's okay because it will be fixed in a later step. Now that's the under eyes done. Now for foundation, so I like this one because it comes in a sort of olive undertone for me, but one thing I do struggle with is it can look a bit ashy around my mouth, which is why I have put on the orange colour corrector, and I'm hoping this will fix it. Now I do also have another foundation, and do I have it to hand? I don't know. So for applying foundation, I like to use these two. So I like to use this one because it comes in a nice olive undertone, but it does lean a bit ashy, especially as we get towards the outer perimeter of my face. So I like to use this one because it's the olive undertone, but it's actually darker. And for some reason, I struggle to find an olive undertone foundation which isn't a very light olive, or this sort of olive which isn't quite dark enough for the outer bit of my face like this one. So especially if you do have darker skin, the perimeter of your face is often darker than towards the inside. It's just how the sun catches your face, and this happens with everyone. It's just more obvious sometimes when you have darker skin. So one way to mitigate the sort of flat and natural looking image you might get if you use just one foundation, it can be useful to get a slightly darker one to put on perimeter and a lighter one to put inside the face, towards the inside of the face. So I'm going to start with the Dior foundation. I'm going to just start by buffing that from the outside in, and I'm going to see how much of the other foundation I need. So I'm just going to start by doing a dabbing motion with a brush, and we'll see how I feel about that. I might go back in with a sponge and sort of smooth out the look. As you can see, as we start to apply the foundation, the orange disappears and it looks more like skin. So I'm just going to get my slightly lighter foundation and I'm just going to work inside out to create a more sort of, what's the word? A sort of more 3D effect with the face. So I'm going to use the same brush as having a bit of the other foundation mixed in, but only aid with that sort of blended and more natural look. And then we're going to get the inside, going to blend outwards. I'm just going to get the right brush and I'm just going to dab a bit of the foundation, sort of blend it in slightly. And there we go, that's a basic skin sort of base application. So my eyebrows are quite straight already, but I'm just going to get a bit of eyebrow gel and a spoolie. I'm just going to comb them through, just to sort of look a bit more neater, but I'm going to keep them in pretty much the same shape. I'm not going to do anything to them. So I'm going to use eye primer. I'm going to use this eye primer in particular. I personally like to use a primer over any sort of concealer, but you can use whichever one you feel works for you best. I'm just going to get a little bit, just going to dab it over the eyelid and then wait for it to dry. So I've got this basic eyeshadow palette. I'm going to start with the lightest shade and I'm going to start with that towards the inner corners of my eyes and I'm going to blend it outwards. So I'm just going to get my little blendy brush, put a bit on, and then I'm going to start with inner corners and then I'm going to just blend out. I'm going to hope the application's right because I can't really see it with my glasses on. So we're going to, with the inner corner there, I'm going to sort of go there and I'm going to slowly go out across like that. So I have quite a hooded eye, so when I open my eye it's probably not really visible. So what I'm going to do is focus on blending it upwards and blending it upwards above where the crease naturally forms when my eye is closed. So when my eye is open it will be a bit more visible, like it's sort of peeking out. So I'm going to sort of do that blend across the whole eyelid. Again, getting shiny and just placing it all over the eye so it's quite shimmery. So it's done. You can probably see a sort of rough dusting of that sparkly sort of shade of my whole eye. So now I'm going to get the next colour of purple that made so much sense. It's going to be the shimmery sort of warm purple shade in the middle, and I'm going to pop that towards the middle and end of my eye and sort of where my pupil is, and then just blend outwards. So I take a bit up and then I sort of work out where my pupil is, and I'm going to just put a bit there, the same sort of motion, making sure we get inside the hood of the eye, but also slightly above the crease, and then we're going to blend outwards. I'm just going to double check that it's in the right place, so we're just going to get under the hood and just over the crease of the eye, and then we're going to blend that outwards towards the end of the eye. Just going to bring it in slightly so it's a bit closer to the pupil, like so. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Just going to start in the middle, then blend outwards inside the hood and on top of the crease. So now we've got some glitter, and I'm going to place this on the inner corner of the eye and slightly above where I put the eyeshadow. So I just mirror out. So I'm going to place it here, just a tiny bit here, and there, and I'm going to follow the natural socket from my eyes. So where you can slightly see the socket of my eye, I'm going to place it there, quite sparsely, and so hopefully you should be able to see some glitter when I move my face, but it's not going to be a very overbearing sort of glitter. It's quite bright at the moment, so maybe you can't quite see the glitter, but in theory, see it. So again, the inner corner, follow the natural socket of my eye, and sort of just blend it out. So it should be a sort of, hopefully you can see something at least. Hopefully it looks something like it should do. I'm going to just curl my eyelashes. And that's on the fun part, which is the false eyelashes. Ooh. So I like this for, it's upside down, hold on. I like this for an under eye eyelash. I feel under eye eyelashes really add something to the look, and I like this sort of style for the eyelashes that go on the top. So as you can see, I think they're actually the exact same shape, and I have seen this shape in local shops if you're in Europe or something like that. It seems they're quite popular now. So these are obviously all individual false eyelashes. What we're going to do is we're going to place them individually, and I know for some people they prefer a strip lash, and if you can find one in that style you like, you can use that. I just personally like to use some good old individuals. So I've got my eyelash glue. I feel for false eyelashes you can probably be a bit more economical, but don't skimp on the glue, because the glue is going to be in direct contact with your skin, and you want to make sure it isn't going to irritate you or anything like that. So I personally like to use Duo. I think most people do. It's just a sort of brand you'll see quite ubiquitously. Don't just say I'm thinking the word ubiquitously. Oh dear. But just find the eyelash glue that you like and your skin agrees with. ¿Dónde es mis pinzas? Pienso que me las pintas debajo en la cocina. Estaba limpiando las pinzas y pienso que deja abajo. Well done. Vale, tienes pinzas, pero no es mi pinzas favoritas. Need to get over it, tweezers are tweezers, but I do have a favorite pair of tweezers. It's not these ones, but get over it. Now we're going to apply the bottom eyelashes. Again, it's the same technique, you're just going to apply it to the bottom this time. And there we go. I think this is probably where you'll see quite a big difference. So this is where you'll probably see more of this sort of look coming together, so you don't recognise. Could probably have placed these eyelashes a little bit better. Maybe you might put one there or something. But you get the general gist. And considering I can't really see at 100%, I think this is pretty good application. So now I'm going to apply blush. I like to use a liquid blush in a sort of, I think this shade is called Dusky Rose, but a colour which is pinkish but sort of natural to my skin tone. And I wanted to use a liquid blush as it's a bit more watery, water-based, a bit more natural, if you will, as naturally as you can get to look like this. So I just dab a bit on my hand, I get a bit on my finger, and I put it just under the eye where the pupil is, and then I blend it upwards. And for me, that's a good mixture of having that cute look and the blush under the eye, and also sort of slightly lifting the face and just complementing the face shape that I naturally have. So just gently go in like this, and then I'll just slowly build this up till I get to a intensity that I like. Now I like a quite intense blush, and I feel with this look you can go quite overboard and quite over the top. The main thing is I'm trying to keep the blush up and not blending too down. Once we blend quite far down, especially by the nose level, it sort of drags the face down a bit, and just to me it's not quite as flattering. So just under the eye and blend up. So now I'm going to contour my nose. I'm not really going to change the shape all too much, it's more for defining it. So I'm going to add a bit of contour to the bottom part, and that's just to bring a bit more definition to the bottom, because it's not as defined. That's generally what a contour's for. A bit of blending brush and just buff it upwards. Create a bit more definition. Now I'm going to get a highlight, or you could use the eyeshadow shade from before, but we're just going to get a bit of highlight and just place it onto my nose and a slight bit there. This to me is the most difficult part to do that glasses on, because to me what looks like a nice natural contour may not look as blended in, just because of how my eyesight is, but I think that looks okay. So what I'm going to do now is the lips. So if you're brown, you may have a slightly darker lip, or a lip where the lips are slightly the different colours. So what I like to do to achieve that more pinky look is just cover the whole lip in some sort of pink lip liner. So this will sort of not mute the lips, but it will make the lips a pink colour, but it won't make it completely pink. Some of the different tones will still shine through, and this will make it look a bit more like a natural tint and a sort of pink glow from within, if you will. And this, so we put a highly pigmented lipstick on, and what I'm going to do is just slightly overdraw at the top lip here. Just all of them. Now I'm going to get our gloss. I think this is a Romand gloss. It's one of the more tint colours. And I'm going to start putting it in the middle of the lip. And then I like to get a finger, well, something like a clean sponge or sort of lip brush. And then I'm just going to get the mirror and I'm just going to buff it out towards the outer edges, but I want to keep the majority of the gloss concentrated in the middle of the lip. Encontró mis pintas favoritas. It's always the way when you don't need them, they show up. I'm going to get the glitter again. I'm just going to concentrate some of it in the middle of the lip, so just a bit